here if you got here from that page. Anywho, let's start with this. See this number 12 I wrote here? This 12 stands for the 12 notes we're dealing with in the Western scale. Remember, every cool song that you've ever heard is only dealing with these 12 notes. So that's kind of good. And when it comes down to jamming in most radio music that you're going to find uh, on rock radio and classic rock radio, is dealing with key centers that are most likely major and minor. There's a sprinkle of cool harmonic minor songs that you'll hear on the radio, like Blue Oyster Cult and stuff like that. Um, what is it? It's not Don't Fear the Reaper, is it? Yeah, it is. I think it's in harmonic minor. But anyways, um, you'll be encountering the major scale mostly and most of all. And there's so many things you can do with it once you learn to explore it. So that is only 7 notes. So at any given time, we're dealing with 7 notes that if you lose two, but keep this framework, sometimes you're only dealing with five if you're playing in a pentatonic kind of sense. But let's not confuse you right now. Let's not worry about that. But let's go for seven. Seven out of 12 is pretty manageable, right? So we only have to find 7 notes on the fretboard. And here is exactly how you do that. You consider this shape here, this basic, call it the prison cell. And this prison cell is prison cell 916. And you'll see why it's number 916 in a little bit. And we'll call it a prison cell. I mean, kind of a limiting, if you will. But the truth is, you can only be playing, it's like a connotation to the fact that you can, the comforting fact. So you don't have to be worried when you jam that there's all this gray area or mystery area that you don't know. Whatever riff you're playing, you're always playing in this box. That's the only thing that exists on your fretboard. It just keeps repeating in a special way all over the place. And the way it butts up to itself creates these other shapes, basically one other shape that doesn't allow this basic piece to jump out at you until some wacko goes crazy with graph paper and finds it all out. So this is the basic structure. Don't believe me? That's okay. Let's explore. So what we're going to do here is 12 out of 7. Let's prove this 12 out of 7 theory right now. We need 12 squares here. So what do we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's consider this entire box here. We've got 5, 10, 15. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 note choices here. We only need 12, right? So that gives us an extra 3 notes. So if we have 15 here, what stands to reason is that we should have all 12 notes available on the fretboard in this one shape, plus 3 other notes, which is impossible. So there's 3 repeating notes. And if you're a guitar, semi-guitar wizard out there, you might know this fact. And if you're a beginner, here is your lesson factoid for today, among many others coming up, that the octave is found on the guitar. If you're playing a note, each one of these squares, as you know from the graph paper method basics, represents a note. If you skip a string, go to the string underneath that. So let's say this is the E string and you're on the A note, the fifth fret. You skip the D and you go down to this, whatever it is, G right down here. You have if this was A, let's basically say that's A. And you know what? We're going to make that A, just for the hell of it, right? So this would be a D, and this would be a G, and then this would be an A, right? So check out what's right below here, G and A. G always comes before A. So there, and then the sharp note in between the G sharp A flat is the same G sharp A flat here. So there's your 1, 2, and 3 repeating notes. And the neat thing about that is that means that there is a link right there to the next spot on the fretboard where this box exists. And that means that whenever you're jamming in here, you don't have to think about another place to go. That is the key. When you keep these shapes separate from each other, I think I'm feeding back here. Hopefully, we're all right. If you keep these, um, if you make these shapes, if you think of them as separate entities, creates a thinking point every time you need to get out of this box and into the next part of the fretboard. And that's your hang up. That's what keeps you from noticing what you're doing. It just pulls your mind away. It's just not what you do. The secret is this, that you are already in the next box. Once you're in this shape, you're already in the next available shape. So it stands to reason that just the same way this box is constructed from GA and then B, C, D, E, F, G, A, the next box is right here, GAB, GAB, and then you would go down here and find the next three pillars of musical creation, right? Just like there's three pillars of creation somewhere in some galaxy of some kind. I don't know. If you know astronomy, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, um, there is the 916 prison cell again. Now, you're wondering right now, or at least you should be wondering right now, okay, if this is the case, then how come A, my guitar teacher never pointed this out to me? And B, I didn't just find this out for myself because it's so stinking easy. Here's why. Notice how many strings it takes to build the shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a guitar fretboard. If you are here in the E string, you have 6 strings, right? E, A, D, G, B, and E. And what happens right here? That string shift, right? The interval shift, meaning E to A is a fourth, A to D is a fourth, D to G is a fourth. Don't worry if you don't know that exactly what that means right now. If you do know what it means, awesome. If you don't know what it means, for those who don't really, you don't really have to know that deeply right now to just get through this. But G to B is not a fourth. G to B is a major third. So um, it's one note shy of being a fourth. So there's that. Everything shifts up for a few good reasons that they did that. Two strings, whatever part of the linkage you're in, jar of notes, jarring effect to the notes, I guess is what I wanted to say, and throws you off. Doesn't let this jump out to you until years later you get lucky enough to stumble across someone rambling on YouTube Live about what it's all about. So, that being said, let's say, well, almost got a fretboard. That would be our nut, right? So this would be our E, our A, our D, our open G, open B, open E, and the F and the G. So if you fill out the whole major scale, it'll also hide the shape too. It won't allow it to appear to your eyes. So there it is. Now, what this does, what we just learned, how GA links up here, or whatever notes you find, you can move this pattern around and different notes will show up in these boxes. Why I chose what I chose is if you put C in a magic square, which we'll talk about in a second, then it turns, it's actually becomes, you're using the C major scale, which is all the whole notes. So I didn't have to put any sharps or flats in here and make it real easy for you to see, but you can move this anywhere and different sharps and flats will show up, but that's irrelevant to, you can jam without even knowing that, just knowing this. What we did here is we linked up the boxes this way, and that's pretty handy, but the promise of this method is also being able to go this way down the strings, this way down the strings, and you already know from your guitar teacher how to go that way and that way, up and down, which you'll be able to figure out, probably the most boring way to go anyway. So let's learn how to get the hell out of there, move around the fretboard in any direction, and even skip over to new chunks of the fretboard. So this way and this way have a special kind of there's a linkage here, a link up here, and it creates a special way to go that way and that way, and to even once again go that way or that way on your fretboard. And I'm going to show you. It's kind of like a doorway. Let's call it the doorway square, because what should link up prison cells but a doorway? So this is the doorway square, because it makes a little square, and that square hangs off the prison at the bottom half here and at the top half here, and that's why we called it prison cell 916, because if we draw this on its own, just to take a look at it, it looks like this. 9, 1, 6. Yin and yang, right? Pretty neat. Or perhaps 41H, right? Each one of these being its own note. So what we're going to do here also is let's fill in these outside notes, and you'll see that this square is the exact same as this square, because what's before C, B, and what's before E and F, and see what the square is picking up. It's a whole bunch of things right here. There's a whole bunch of information right there. It's the half steps that are involved in do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the major scale. Do, re, mi are whole steps, but then between mi and fa is a half step. And then at the end of the scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. From ti to do is a half step. So ti, do, and mi, fa, right? So B, C, E, F in the C major scale. And also that, so we can, since how do we know it's the C major scale? Well, that's why we're going to shade in this block right here. It's your magic block. This is your root note block. As you see, it occurs in the small shape, the small navigation square, and in the large prison cell. It's in the overlap. It's kind of cool because it makes everything really handy and easy to know. If you're in the key, what, like, if someone says, hey, play in the key of F, you put that box over the F note, and all the other notes, you don't have to know them. This shape will automatically contain all the notes of F. So I have to know shapes, not really note names to improvise. You can know them for other things, and it's good to know them, but not it can be a hindrance when you're trying to learn just to something simple as getting across your instrument in all keys. So use that as your magic note to plug into any key. Now, real quick, for those more advanced and more knowledgeable people here that understand a little bit about modes, if you get lost here, don't worry. We're going to go back into normal land here in a second. If you know that the scale has modal names that create a little bit of a different sounding scale, some sad, some happier, some, whatever, you know that it's basically the first note of the scale, which we said is this box: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and B for Locrian, which we're not even going to worry about. But let's say you wanted to play in a mode, you still use this shape, but you now consider this your gray box, right? Your root note box. And so this would be playing a bass note while playing this scale shape. Just simply playing a rhythm and a bass note, a D bass note, will get you the sound of Dorian in a very basic sense. So now you can start to very simply in your own home studio find out about modes get them right in your ear. Just find out, experiment, what kind of emotional sound do they give you. Play an E note and play this shape and hear what a Phrygian scale sounds like coming from your guitar. All the bass note is doing is holding down an E note, but the way your notes will reflect off that root E will call out to the listener that you're exposing Phrygian, not Ionian. So you'll have a Phrygian sound. Is it fully the Phrygian mode? Well, theorists could debate that all day long, but um, in a very basic sense, yeah, it's going to have that describably Phrygian sound. Phrygian, right? Okay, I suggest using Dorian and Mixolydian, which have really cool characteristic sounds and very palatable. But it depends on your mood. If you're in a kind of a more edgy mood, Phrygian might be your thing. And Aeolian is always like a nice, rockin' solid, darker friend, a la Stairway to Heaven and a million other solos that have been in Aeolian. Ton of other ones in Dorian. Start to recognize it. If you move this down the fretboard and different note names show up, this box will always be Dorian. This box will always be Phrygian. If you put your bass note here, blah, 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 or your chord, whatever, it gets a little deep and we're not going there today. But we can make this a modal lesson someday. But you can see here that this method not only covers you unlocking your fretboard, but it's basically like everything about the um, about music theory that you need to know and understand as well. I created a code box in one lesson or two lessons previous to this one. If you find that lesson, copy down that code box and you can plug all those ideas into here to, when it comes time to explore modes or intervals, major and minor, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so some other things here. Let's talk more about this square. BCEF. So look at that. BCEF, BCEF. The square is about using half steps. Let's look at some other things. It links up on the basically upper, or call this the top, it's the bottom of your guitar, whatever you want to call this. This end of the square, it's up here, and on this end, it's basically down here. Kind of like it's on the opposite side and on the opposite side in kind of both ways. Kind of shows the up and down, as is above, so is below geometry that is found throughout everything on the fretboard, which I've shown in other videos too. Anyways, the square here is full of so many answers, so many cool things. You can get in and out of your shape by thinking about the square. Here's a neat thing about the square. See how on this side of the square you skip a note, it's kind of, there's a symmetry here, and on the back side of the square there's a symmetry here. So basically that means that everywhere you find this square, which is right here, these notes will always be predictably right here. So you just really expanded your playing field right there. We know that these open strings would then be playable, and all these notes are either going to sound wrong if you didn't want to play them when you hit them, or they can work as you now know where your tension notes are when and if you want to add in tension. There they are, clearly in your mind's eye. If you just, know that you're on a wall of notes. I'm going to play it real quick so you can hear. You've probably played this a million times. If you recognize that as the top of the Mixolydian shape, because, hey, look, there's the 5, the 5th of C, 5, Mixolydian. Let's play that really quick here. I'm going to grab a guitar, so hold on. From the G note. Move the guitar strap off the strings. And hold the pick the right way. Disregard all that other jamming, but anyways, that was just walking up the scale that way. So if you were riffing through there, you're probably already jamming in these shapes right here. Like there's the top of what I consider the Aeolian scale. And look at that. Starts at the um, sixth compared to the C. So there it is. And I know that that scale has another note right here. And what do you know? There's the C. So there's the B. And here's EF. So notice our square here is messed up. That's because of the B string shift that you just, only thing that you have to get over. And a kind of cool thing is because now that you know this little hiccup here, if you can get around that, you just put yourself, that's the bar that is kind of holding a lot of other guitarists behind you now that you've been told this, basically, this information. You found this awesome secret about jamming. What is this shape? Is this like a whole new place? No. It helps you get from this shape into this shape again. But how? Well, this square is made up of this shape. It's just the next one over, and it's always kind of connected to, they're always connected to each other here and here. So therefore, if there was no string shift, let's continue drawing here. You'd have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you guessed it, 1, 2, 3. So you know where you are there. You know where you are here now. And therefore stands to reason that you'd have a here, a here, a here, a here. Now, if you have, the cool thing about knowing the guitar shape like this, if you have a standard tuned 6 string, 7 string guitar, 8 string guitar, 9 string, 10 strings, guess what? It's going to keep on having this shape. You could play, you could be an instant master of any string guitar and sound like the coolest guy anywhere or girl. So now this is all running into my original picture here, but I wanted to show you this down here. The 916 has disappeared. Maybe I'll color it in. Here was our original 916, right? Some random dot there ruining things. That's not showing up very well. So all right. Straighten everything out for you people. So you have another, basically the same exact shape, shows up here, 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 and here, and then again here, here, and here, and here. So it would just keep on going on and on like that. That's your whole fretboard. You can either be in this shape, the 1, 2, 3 shape, or in one of the squares that is meaning that you're basically connected to this shape. So when you're jamming, if you're in a little half step spot, here you are. You can go anywhere else. You can be comfortable. And once you get comfortable with where you are, like, it doesn't take the enjoyment out of things. It actually increases the enjoyment because you become such a better player because your mind now starts hearing what you're playing in a better way. You've been hearing what you're playing sort of before, but it gets lost in the mental chatter of you trying to get around the fretboard and wondering where the hell to go next. Once that chatter goes away and you can just go there because you know, okay, my next note, my next pool of notes, if I want to go here, they're all right here. If I want to go here, they're all right here. And if I want to go here, they're all right there. Once you do that, it frees your mind up to hear every note you're playing and how it resonates with what's going on in the background and how it leads you to want to go somewhere else. And then you start becoming that real soulful player because you're sitting there drawing off of your inner flow, your inner energy, your inner emotional energy, your soul, right? Whatever you refer to it as, where all that music comes from, and it starts turning on because it's like oh my gosh, this person's paying attention to me. It's found me. It knows where to draw its musical inspiration from now. So try this, man. I think you're going to really knock your own socks off if you think about your fretboard this way. You'll also, if you've spent time trying to uh, know the fretboard and you've got it, little bits and there were gray areas. Well, the cool thing is those little bits will now plug into this formula and you can know where you are that way. Like for example, when I got good at this, I still always got lost in between the scale shape. That's if you started a scale from the let's say the seventh note to the one note, like right in between there was like this, like right here, this like the shape like never made sense to me. Somewhere right around here, I don't know. Until I learned this method, now I kind of know that there's a square here and a square here, B, C, E, F. This is something you've seen me talk about in other videos when I've talked about just referencing this square. I've done other videos where just knowing this one little square, you can know the whole fretboard, but what you're really doing is playing in the master pattern, which is what I'm showing you today, this cell block of 15 notes that are right under your fingertips. So the square being 2 notes and joining at an angle makes a nice little fretboard pattern here. I'll see if I can draw it out here and make it really viewable. Let me get some other marker here. Let's try this. All right. When I see that square, well, the rule of the square is that they always link up at the corner. And that makes sense too, because if you see this repeating B, F, B, F, B, F, that's a tritone. This is your tritone row. When you see something that's diminished, it always has this row. When they talk about a seventh chord, and there's like this diminished note, and look for this little area in the fingering. That's your diminished note, because that interval, that traveling in that direction on a guitar fretboard, that in standard tuning is always a flat fifth. This is always your flat fifth row, or you can call it your diminished row. Now, it would be really awesome if that string shift was not, oh my gosh, sorry everybody. I just realized that my camera was never set to stabilize the focus and it's been going in and out here the whole video, so nobody's watching anyways, so I guess that's unfortunate because I want to simply edit this video and leave it up, but that would be too much editing out. So, focus, apply. Okay, all right. Now it will no longer go in and out of focus. We should do what do you call it? The exposure as well. Boom, gone. Apply. Okay, that will be stable now. Oh my gosh. So now, what was I saying? The string shift messes up the corner theory here, and as you know, you always have to shift over there, so our square should naturally fall right there. So notice this, that the square falls into on the first 2 strings and the middle 2 and the bottom 2 nice and evenly, and it covers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frets, right? So to get to the next, I mean, if we find another B note 12 frets away, this pattern exists again. But does the box show up in a row going this way one more time? And the answer is yes, it does. I'm trying to get to the points a little quicker here on this video without a whole bunch of rambling explanations. I find myself thinking like, okay, people are going to get confused here, get confused there, and they're going to look at this, be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what's that square supposed to do for my music? And I think if you just noodle around your, pick a mode, line it up as instructed earlier, and jam, you'll find out where these boxes, find out if, your fingers are fast there. I think you'll see like that's where you can draw some quick lines from some scalar type patterns, some runs, I guess they're called. So, like I'm sure you've already played the this little lick here in these 4 boxes stacked on top of each other. So these 8 boxes with your, or especially this one right here. I think you can think of a million Santana licks where he, pulled off this one and pulled off that one and repeated that. Pretty pretty standard basic lick there. Moving on here. So guess the point was square boxes here. As is above, so is below. So here we have EF, and we all know EF is part of the box. That would make the BC will always be above EF, and there's no string there, so we have a half a box here. And what that does is this: it finds us our next area that leads us back to this box. And in this area, the box does something different. It's made of 2 strings, so it's always 2, 4, 6. So it's a half string here, or a half box here. So we have 1 string. Then we would have our 2, and then our 4. But we got to be careful with our 4 here because we have the B string shift to think about. Now, if you said, hey, that's part of the Aeolian box, hey, real good eye right there. You already know some of your stuff. But if you didn't, well, this stuff will pop out at you eventually. So here we have there's probably some notes there. And if you now you can see how using this, know the box, fill in each end, all of a sudden the whole major scale is filling in right without even thinking about 3 thoughts. You have every note available to you. So you have half a box on the 4th and 5th string. You have a box, 6th. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Anyways, on this string and that string, the A and D string, you have a box. On the G and B string, you have this broken box. And then connecting at the corner, as it should, you have the final box here at the bottom. And put 1 note there and 1 note on top. And you're seeing the bottom of what you may have been told was the Aeolian scale, because it starts on the 5th. And, that means that this box should be an A, right? And what do you know? We have E, F, G, A. It's down here. So here, where this box is a half box, as is above, so is below, we find our full box. And that means if our full box is there, we have a half box down here. Half box, half box. What do you know? That should be our B and our C. Let's see if that lines up. Here we have our E, F, G, A, B, and C lined up. D, then E and F, G, A, B, C, once again, B, C, E, F. Everything right there as expected, so you can stop worrying about where you are because you just follow these simple rules and your fingers will always land on a good note. And the time that your finger slips, because sometimes they will, and lands on a bad note, embrace it because it was probably meant to happen. I've learned to do this, and it actually a lot of times sounds cooler than I thought it did. If you listen back to yourself, if you record or whatever. But the trick is, once you hit that note, you have to slide forward or backward. I mostly slide forward, and you'll find what? Let's say you hit this wrong note. Is there a good note right there? Try this note. Is there a good note right there? How about this note? Good note. And if you go anywhere on this fretboard, you'll find out that there is a good note always next to a bad note. The Victor Wooten secret is right here on the graph paper method. So from there, how can you hit a bad note? when you know how to solve a bad note and you know where all the good notes are now on your fretboard. Try that when you jam. And if you find this video helpful, click on the Patreon link somewhere below. I would super appreciate that. And we'll go from there. Maybe I'll see that how terrible this video was and just totally delete it and make something